What up, everybody? It's your boy Just Brandon here with another tabletop review. Today we're going to change things up a little bit. Normally I try to stay away from gun reviews and focus strictly on the ammo, but today we're going to talk about one of my newest acquisitions, and that is this little guy. This is the Taurus Spectrum chambered in 380 ACP. Now, for starters, I was in no way, shape, form, and fashion interested in buying one of these, as I have a Ruger LCP2 that I absolutely love. However, this was the very definition of the term impulse buy. My local gun store had this thing on sale for about $119.99. With taxes and everything, it came out to be 128 bucks. Now, I don't know about you, but 128 bucks for a gun to me screams cheap and should avoid it at all costs. I mean, for Christ's sakes, it's even cheaper than the High Point. However, the line for this thing was out the door. People really seem to love it, and honestly, I can see why. I mean, it's small, it's fairly affordable, and it comes in like 100 different colors. There were people there buying 2, 3, 4 of them at a time. So I was actually pretty fortunate to get my hands on one of these. I mean, this was actually one of the last ones they had, and it just so happened to be in the color I wanted. This is black on black, all black everything. So let's go over a couple of features of the gun real quick. I mean, it comes with a 6-round flush fitting mag and a 7-round extended mag. I got them both here. This is the 6-round mag, and this is the 7-round mag. A lot of people been talking a lot of shit about this pinky extension, and for good reason, and we'll kind of get into that later. It kind of looks wonky or whatever, and it kind of makes loading the magazine a little bit difficult, but like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Takedown is touted to be the easiest takedown in the industry. Basically, you have a little screw notch here, and you can use anything, whether it be a screwdriver or a bent up shell casing, to kind of just turn it, and slide comes right off. You don't have to dry fire it. We can actually show you that now. I just use a screwdriver, turn it, and slide comes right off. That's where the easiness stops for me. The first problem I ever had with this gun is when I tried to clean it, give it its initial cleaning right out of the box. The recoil spring is unusually long, and the guide rod is fairly short, and they're not captive, which, I mean, it's a $120 gun, so can't really be that upset about it. The problem comes when you're trying to reassemble the gun. It is almost impossible to get the recoil spring back underneath the barrel and back onto the slide. It took me, the first time I did it, maybe a couple hours, and even then I barely got it in. It took a lot of time, practice, and patience to be able to get it done. Fortunately for myself, now after I've shot it a few times, the spring kind of has loosened up, and it's a little bit easier to get it back in, but it does take a little bit of effort. Once you've managed to get the spring back onto the bottom of the barrel, you see here, you will notice that unlike other pistols, the spring doesn't sit on the top of the barrel. There's actually a step on here, and it sits just beneath the step on the barrel. So something to keep in mind. Once you have everything back together, you simply line the rails up like so, and you rack it. When you rack it, it goes from the unlock position back into the lock position. They do recommend racking a slide a couple times just to make sure that it doesn't come off. Really, no bones about that. The trigger is a full double action trigger. So it is a very, very slow and deliberate and heavy trigger pull. And that's done by design. This is done so that people who may want to carry this in their pocket cannot accidentally discharge. You have to be deliberate, meaning you have to pull the trigger in order for this thing to go off. So there's absolutely no take up. This is a take up on the gun. Almost nothing. There's a hard wall that you have to pull through with probably about 7 or 8 pounds of pressure. And then it's very, very long until the trigger breaks. Reset is a full reset, meaning the trigger travels all the way back to the front position before it resets. Right there. And then you do it again. Now, because of this, Taurus is claiming that it has what they're calling double tap capabilities, meaning if your firing pin strikes a weak primer and the round doesn't go off, you can just pull the trigger again and possibly shoot the round off. I didn't have to experience that, so I can't speak on that. One thing I did notice when shooting the gun, however, even before shooting the gun, is trying to rack a round through was a little bit difficult at first. The rounds did keep getting jammed up, but after a couple mags, it did kind of go away. Brings me to the magazines. If you're using a Maglula, Uplula, speed loader, they will not work on these. These are too small, they won't work. So you have to load these by hand, which isn't really a big deal with the flush fitting one, but it is a big deal with this one because this does not sit properly for anything. So having the mag flush on the table, loading the rounds, no big deal for the small one. For the big one, it kind of gets a little bit wonky. As you can see, there's no stable base to you to do it. So you have to do it in hand. When it comes to shooting these things, I found the 6-round mag to be fairly accurate. I mean, fresh out of the box, I did have a couple jams. There's been a lot of people who complained about how this gun actually chambers rounds. A lot of people were getting failure to feeds or failure to rejects. I did have both of those happen to me on the range, but I kind of attribute that to me getting used to the gun, because after I kind of got used to how the trigger broke and how to hold it properly and to get my hand off the slide or whatever, those issues went away. When it comes to shooting the extended round magazine, however, this is where I have a problem, because it's supposed to find the pinky extension is supposed to provide a little bit of more comfort and support, and it does neither. This thing is actually fairly loose and it wiggles. I don't know how well that comes across on camera, but it does wiggle back and forth quite a bit fairly easily. So when you're shooting this thing and it's going off, your pinky's actually pushing against the extension and the gun kind of dips down. That could be a problem. It throws off your aim. Speaking of aiming, the sights on this thing are milled black on black sights. Some people don't like those. I don't really care. This isn't really meant to shoot at any type of distance. This is 10 yards or less type of pistol. I actually have the same type of sights on my Ruger EC9S, and I absolutely love this gun. I haven't had a problem out of it. So these don't bother me that much. You can't, shooting these things, you can barely see them anyway. So this is more of a point and shoot, 10 yards or less type of pistol. Overall, man, I gotta say that after putting about 50, 60 rounds down range on this thing, I did have a couple missteps, a couple of failure to feeds, a couple of failure to rejects. The recoil spring installation is a pain in the ass. So if that's something that you're not capable of doing, you do kind of need strong hands to get it done. That might be something to take into consideration. But all in all, for 128 bucks out the door, I find it hard to say anything really, really bad about this gun. Would this be my primary carry weapon? No, never. First of all, the failure to feeds and the failure to rejects, I mean, I know any gun can do it, and it does depend on, how you're holding the gun and if you're limp wristing it or not. But the fact that it does it with both magazines, and I had it happen to me consistently out of both magazines, it kind of like persuade me away from having it as my primary carry weapon. I will still continue to carry my Springfield XD until the Hellcat comes out, or until I can get my hands on the Hellcat. This will make a good backup gun, though. I'm not gonna lie. I have carried this in my pocket. I have carried this in my truck. And I do feel confident that if, push came to shove, I would be able to use it effectively. So with that being said, if you can find these things anywhere with a good price, I do kind of recommend picking one up. If for nothing else, gun was 120 bucks, and it can possibly save your life. I am just Brandon. This is the Taurus Spectrum, and this has been my first mag review.